Welcome to today's screencast on using a single bracha to cover numerous food items. Glad you're learning with us today. Before we get started, please make sure you have something to write with and the note-taking guide that you received from me in class. You'll need both of those throughout the course of this screencast. Recently, we've been talking a lot about brachot, different brachot that you make on different foods. For example, brachot that you make on fruits, borei pri ha'etz, brachot that you make on vegetables, borei pri ha'adama, brachot that you make on grain type items like cookies or cakes or pastas or cereals, borei minei mezonot, and of course the brachot that you make on everything else, cheeses, meat, fish, pretty much everything else, shahakol niyeh bidvaro. We even talked about what happens if you make the wrong bracha. Can a wrong bracha still count b'diavad after the fact for a food item? And we had a good time discussing that the other day in class. But today, I'd like to talk to you about the power of a bracha to move from place to place. When I was a kid, I used to really enjoy the Energizer Bunny commercials that were broadcast usually during sporting events. For some reason, sporting events and batteries, they go together. But the Energizer Bunny, according to the advertisement at least, according to Energizer, according to Duracell, which makes the Energizer battery, the Energizer Bunny could keep moving and moving and moving. It just went on and on and on, and it kind of banged its drum and moved from place to place. Well, you know what? A bracha is the same thing. Brachot have the ability to move from one food item to the next. And take, for example, the following case of an apple and an orange. What would be the correct bracha rishona on an apple? Go ahead, shout it out at the computer. No one's going to stop you. That's right, ha'etz. What about for an orange? Do the same thing, shout it out. Not too loudly, I don't want you to wake anyone else up in the house. Okay, ha'etz again. So the truth is, you wouldn't have to make that bracha twice. You'd only have to make that bracha once, either on the apple or on the orange, but not for the apple and again for the orange. Can you think about why that might be? Well, if you said bracha she'ena tzricha, you're right. Remember we talked in class in one of the previous Mishnayot that we studied that it's not a good idea to say a bracha for no reason. That, of course, goes against the third of the Aseret HaDibrot, Lo tisa et shem Hashem Elokecha lashav. Don't take Hashem's name in vain. Anytime you say a bracha for no reason, which is bracha levatala, or more specifically, a bracha that was unnecessary to recite, a bracha she'ena tzricha, you would violate this commandment, and that's certainly not a good thing. What happens, however, and this is our question for today, if you have two items in front of you, could one bracha cover the other food? In other words, would you be missing out on a bracha opportunity by not making a bracha for every single food? Or is it completely permissible to use one bracha to cover other foods? In order for us to understand this today, we've got to cover a few rules. Let's start with the first one, and that is that both foods have to have the same bracha. So think about your apple and your orange. Both of those, as you correctly said before, are ha'etz, and because they both have the same bracha rishona, the bracha on the apple could count for the bracha on the orange. In class tomorrow we'll see some more on that. It's a little more complicated than what we're learning right now, but basically if the two items have the same bracha, you can apply this rule. Of course, if the two items don't have the same bracha, like a potato, ha'adama, and an orange, which is ha'etz, you couldn't use the bracha of the potato to cover the orange, nor could you use the orange to cover the bracha for the potato. They're two totally different brachot. At the end of this screencast, when you go through some of the practice materials, this example of a potato and an orange is actually going to come back, so keep this in the back of your head for now. A second rule about whether one bracha can count for multiple items is that both foods have to be the same type. And by that I mean solid and solid, or liquid and liquid. Take, for example, a beautiful barbecued piece of salmon. Doesn't that look wonderful? And a glass of water. Let's say you're enjoying the two of those items for lunch or maybe a light dinner. Both of these items, of course, have the same bracha, and that would be, go ahead, shout it out. That's right, shahakol. And so technically, even though they both have the same bracha, and technically we would have thought that maybe you could apply the bracha from the salmon to the bracha on the water, you actually can't do that. And that's because they're not the same type. Salmon is a solid, water is a liquid. And there's a third rule, which is probably the most complicated of the three we're going to study today, and that is that you can only apply one bracha to another food item if the second item has a lower rank than the first food item. Think back to what we've learned in the fourth Mishnah in the sixth parak of Masechet Brachot. We discussed the rankings of Brachot and how to decide which food items should be given priority, which ones should be blessed first if you have multiple foods in front of you. At the top of the list, the highest ranked bracha is hamotzi, and that's because it's the most specific. It only works for bread items. At the bottom of the list, the lowest rank of all the brachot is shahakol, and that's because it's the least specific of all brachot. It counts for lots of different things. When you put all this together and look at it in terms of the big picture, we have to make some decisions when it comes to whether a food has a higher rank or a lower rank than its partner food. So when you have two foods in front of you, you have to decide which, if any, of these foods has the higher rank. The way you would do this is by looking at these four factors. The first one is most specific, and again, we talked about this way to determine specificity. That's right, that's a real word, specificity. To determine specificity in your brachot, assuming they're equally specific, you would look to see if one of those items is from Shivat Haminim, if neither of them are from Shivat Haminim, or if both of them are from Shivat Haminim. You got to go to the third factor, which is whole versus sliced. Whole items are given priority over non-whole items. For example, something sliced or something that's previously bitten. And finally, if all things are equaled, your most preferred food, the one you like the most, would be given priority. This is the opinion of the Chachamim in the Mishnah. So take a look at the following example here of an apple and grapes. On your note-taking guide, I'd like you to decide which of these foods is the higher ranked food, and also determine, could the bracha of the apple cover the bracha on the grapes? And I guess the opposite, could the bracha on the grapes cover the bracha on the apple? Go ahead and pause the video now, answer that question, and when you're done, click play to continue watching and learning. So now that you've answered that question, let's review what we've learned for today. One bracha can cover multiple foods so long as both foods have the same bracha rishona. Both foods have to be the same type, both solid or both liquid. And the second food has to be a lower ranked item than the first. If it's a higher rank, the first food item cannot cover the second and higher ranked item that exists. So right now, before you finish watching this video, take a look at your note-taking guide and notice how at the bottom of the page there are some practice opportunities for you to show what you learned today. Some of this information is going to be used tomorrow when we work together in some exploration groups to go deeper into this subject, and give these questions your best shot. If you have trouble answering them, don't worry. Feel free to watch this video again or to spend a little more time on some of those questions. But if you're truly stuck, that's okay. Just leave the questions blank after giving it your best shot, and we'll talk about those tomorrow. At this point, you can stop the video and take a look at your note-taking guide. Thanks for learning today, and I look forward to continuing this discussion with you in class tomorrow.